Hello, grade 6. Welcome back to Nelson Math section 12.7. Today we're looking at relating percents to decimals and fractions. None of these terms are new to you. We're building on the information we learned about percents and ratios last time, as well as relating it to decimals and fractions. All three of these terms are generally interchangeable. You can write the exact same number as a percent, a decimal, or a fraction. They will be equivalent, they'll look different, but they will have the same value. So let's start doing a few of these at a time. We're going to show 50%. So I'm going to shade in 50% of this 100 grid. And there's 50% of it. Out of the 100 pieces that I have here, I have 50 shaded in. And we learned last time that percent is another name for per 100. So this 50% is like the fraction 50 over 100. We can now convert this. We'll move on to fractions first. We'll convert it to a fraction because now we can see if we have this large 100 square and break it up into exactly two pieces, one of those pieces, exactly one of those pieces, is shaded in blue. And that's why we have our 1 over 2. One piece shaded in blue out of two total pieces. And lastly, here is the decimal. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns shaded in blue. Each one of these columns happens to be 1/10. So if this column here, if this column is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, and that's how we got the fraction 5/10. This fraction has an invisible denominator of 1. So that's how we got that one. Now we're going to move on. Here we see another 100 grid. Move it over here a little bit. For this 100 grid, I'm going to shade in 40%. So let's shade in 40 of the total 100. Once again, there are 100 squares in my 10 by 10 grid, and I'm shading in 4 of them. So let's now make them shaded. And here we have 40 of my total 100 squares have been shaded in that light red, in that pink color. So here's where we get our 40%. Let's look now at our 0.4. Our 0.4, or our 4/10, means that we have 4 of the tenths strips. So we have here 1/10 is this line here, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10. So we have 4/10 filled in. However, another way we can look at this is by a fraction form, which is this 4/10 over here. If every one of these columns is a tenth and 4 of them have been filled in, we have 4 of the 10 columns filled in. However, we can also write this 4/10 in a different way. We can write this as 2/5. And we're going to see now how we can rewrite this by breaking up our 100 grid into exactly 5 pieces. As you can see from this picture, I've put solid black boxes around and within our 100 grid. And I have made exactly 5 pieces and 20 of these small squares in each. So, because I have exactly 5 equal pieces and 2 of the equal pieces have been shaded, I can now state that another way of writing 4/10 is 2/5. Once again, any of these numbers can be interchangeable to suit our purposes. All of the numbers are equivalent. However, they are not the same. They have the same value, which means is another name for equivalent. One other thing to notice in this is that 50% or 0.5 or 1 over 2 is greater than the 40% or the 0.4 or the 2/5. That makes sense because there's more of the blue shaded than there is of the pink. We can now move on to a different example. In this example, I'm going to show 10%. So 10% would be 10 out of the total of 100 pieces. So I'm going to shade in one of these boxes, one of these columns rather. So I've shaded in 10 of these boxes. So there's my 10%. I can also rewrite it as a decimal. This decimal of 0.1 can be stated as 1/10. So one of these columns has been filled in out of a total of 10 of them, which leads back to our fraction right here. One of the columns out of 10 of them have been shaded in. I can now show you this one here. This one's slightly different for 25%. For 25%, now we have a non-zero in the ones column for our percentages. All of our other percentages were a multiple of 10. So now we're moving into something different. So here it is 25%. And 25%, we can shade that in once again. So we'll shade that. And there we see them shaded. So 25 pieces out of a total of 100. Now, when I count these, and I count the 25, I'm counting 25 hundredths because we are broken up into 100 pieces in our hundredths grid. So we see here 25 of those pieces, and that's how we get this term right here of 0.25 or 25 hundredths. I can state it that way. I can also state it by taking these two columns right here and moving them down to here. I'm going to show you the 0.25 in a different way. So I've moved the colored squares that were over here down here. So now I have a column of 10, and a column of 5. It's still the same value. All I've done is moved the colored squares around. But now you can see this is 1/10, this is another 10th, and this is 5 of the 100ths. And here we can see where these numbers come from. So a 10th here and a 10th here, that's where your 2 comes from. There are 2 tenths. But we also have the addition of 5 of the hundredths, which are right here. And because I've written it this way, it's a bit more difficult to see the 1/4. When I had one of the 4 pieces put in, that was exactly one piece that was orange out of a total of 4 pieces. We're now going to move on, and we're going to look at the fractions that only have the ones in the percentage. So this 5% means I have to shade in 5 of my 100. So we're going to do that now. So here we see 5 of my total of 100, and there's my percentage, which I can also write, of course, as a fraction, which is down here. And because one of these is a hundredth, one of these small squares is known as a hundredth, 5 of these would be known as 5 hundredths. And that's where this number comes in right here. 5 hundredths. So 0 ones, 0 tenths, and 5 hundredths. However, there is one more way we can write this 5 hundredths. We can write an equivalent fraction to this so that we are able to see it what we call lowest terms. So if I was to draw an exact number of pieces here, you'll see what I mean. As you can see from my diagram, I cut my hundredths chart into exactly 20 equal pieces. I have 10 up here, and I have 10 down here. All of these pieces are the exact same size. One of the pieces is in green. So another way of writing this fraction is 1/20, or 1/20th. All of these are equivalent. They look different, but they have the same value. Thanks, and have a good day.